The red sands of Earth swirled in endless toxic winds, carrying the last whispers of civilization that no longer existed. The planet's atmosphere glowed with radiation, painting the sky in shades of sickly green and dying orange. Nothing lived here anymore. Nothing could. Tamin's starship cut through the poison clouds like a blade through water. His vessel was no ordinary craft. It was an extension of himself, a dragon-formed ship that responded to his thoughts as naturally as his own body. The radiation storms that would have torn apart any other ship simply parted before him, recognizing the ancient power that commanded them to move. 127 years had passed since the War of Ash. 127 years since the Galactic Confederacy had made their terrible decision. Humanity was too dangerous to exist, they had declared. Too unpredictable, too creative, too capable of change. Tamin remembered the vote in the council chambers. He had been one of only 3 voices against extinction. He had lost. Humanity had lost. Earth had burned. Now he was here on what should have been a routine patrol. The Confederacy wanted to make sure Earth stayed dead, that no remnants of human technology could ever be recovered and studied. It was his job to investigate any anomalies, any signs that something might have survived. His scanners picked up something strange. Deep beneath what humans had once called the Rocky Mountains, there was an energy signature. Faint, but definitely there. It shouldn't exist. Nothing on Earth should have power anymore. Tamin shifted his ship into landing mode and touched down on the irradiated soil. The ground crunched beneath his vessel. Centuries of ash compacted into a gray desert. He emerged from his ship, his massive draconic form proof against the radiation and toxic air. His scales, each one harder than steel, shimmered with an inner light that had burned for 3,000 years. He walked toward the source of the signal, his clawed feet leaving deep prints in the dead earth. The entrance to an old bunker lay collapsed beneath a fallen mountain. Tamin's powerful arms began to dig, tearing through reinforced concrete and twisted metal as if they were paper. The deeper he dug, the stronger the signal became. His hearts, for dragons at 3, began to beat faster. What could have survived down here? What human technology still functioned after more than a century? His claws scraped against something smooth. He pulled away the last layer of debris and found himself staring at a cryogenic pod. Its lights blinked weakly, dying but not yet dead. The power cells were in their final moments of life. Tamin leaned closer, peering through the frosted glass of the pod window. Inside was a baby, a human baby, his breath caught in his massive chest. This was impossible. The Confederacy had been thorough, terribly, efficiently thorough. Every human settlement had been found and destroyed. Every escape pod had been tracked. Every bunker had been scoured. They had left nothing to chance. Yet here, in this forgotten place, a child slept in frozen dreams. The pod's alarms began to sound, shrill and desperate. The display showed critical failure across all systems. The power would die in minutes, maybe less. Tamin stood frozen, his mind racing through possibilities. If he reported this, the Confederacy would send a team. They would destroy the pod and the child inside. No questions asked, no mercy given. The law was absolute. Humanity's extinction was complete and final. If he took the child, he would be breaking every law of the Confederacy. The Draconic Code itself demanded that humanity remain extinct. His own people would hunt him if they knew. He would become a traitor to everything he had sworn to uphold. The infant's tiny hand moved, fingers curling in sleep. Tamin had seen 3,000 years of life. He had fought in countless wars. He had watched civilizations rise and fall. He had killed when necessary and shown mercy when he could. But he had never faced a choice like this. The alarms grew louder. 30 seconds of power remained. His claws, capable of tearing through battleship armor, moved with impossible gentleness. He opened the pod and lifted the child out. She was so small, so warm against the scaled chest. Her skin held a softness that Earth hadn't felt in over a century. 20 seconds. He wrapped her in thermal shielding from his ship, creating a protective cocoon. She made a small sound, not quite a cry, just a murmur of life continuing. 10 seconds. Tamin turned and ran back to his ship, the child held carefully against him. Behind him, the pod's power finally died, its lights going dark forever. Inside his vessel, he looked down at the sleeping infant. She had survived where billions had not. She deserved a name that honored them all. Ash, he whispered, his deep voice rumbling. After the war that took your people. He set course for Rhea, Saturn's distant moon. Remote, isolated, perfect for hiding the galaxy's greatest secret. As Earth disappeared behind him, Tamine felt the weight of his decision. He had saved one life. One human life. The Confederacy would kill them both if they ever knew. 12 years passed on Rhea like whispers in the void. The small moon orbited Saturn in silence, far from the busy trade routes and curious eyes of the Confederacy. It was the perfect place to hide a secret, the perfect place to raise a child who should not exist. Jaiwin stood in the training hall, her wooden staff spinning in precise arcs through the air. She had chosen that name for herself at age 7, rejecting the name Ash that Tamine had given her. Ash is what's left after fire, she had said with the seriousness only a child could muster. I want a name that means I'm alive. Tamine watched from the shadows of the hall, his massive form blending into the darkness. Pride and fear warred in his ancient heart as he observed her movements. She was fast, faster than any human child should be. But then again, he had no real comparison. All his knowledge of humans came from old records, from a species long dead. Again, he rumbled, his deep voice echoing off the metal walls. Your footwork is sloppy. Jaiwin grinned, sweat dripping down her face and soaking her training clothes. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy knot, and her eyes sparkled with the kind of confidence that made Tamine both proud and worried. You say that every time, she shot back, and every time I still win. It was true, and they both knew it. Her learning speed was extraordinary. Everything Tamine taught her, she absorbed like a sponge drinking water. Combat techniques that took other species years to master, she learned in months. Engineering principles that should have been beyond a child, she understood with ease. The old records had mentioned this about humans, their ability to adapt, to learn, to overcome. Jaiwin proved those records right every single day. But it also terrified him, because the same adaptability that made humans remarkable was exactly why the Confederacy had feared them, why they had voted for extinction. Break time, Tamine announced, stepping into the light. His scales caught the artificial illumination, shimmering in shades of deep blue and silver. You need water. Jaiwin collapsed onto a bench, breathing hard but still smiling. She grabbed her water container and drank deeply. When can I see the stations? She asked, not for the first time. The trade stations near Saturn. You've shown me pictures. I want to see them for real. Tamine's heart sank. This conversation happened more frequently now. Jaiwin was growing, becoming curious about the world beyond their isolated home. How could he explain that the galaxy outside would kill her on sight? The stations aren't safe, he said carefully. Nothing's safe, Jaiwin replied, her young voice carrying a wisdom that shouldn't belong to a 12-year-old. You've taught me that. But hiding forever isn't living either. She was too smart. She had always been too smart. At age 5, she had figured out how to bypass the security locks on Tamine's archive room. At age 8, she had hacked into the basic level Confederacy news feeds, though Tamine had shut that down quickly. Now at 12, she asked questions that had no good answers. Why do the Confederacy ships make you nervous? She asked, watching him with those sharp, observant eyes. Whenever they pass nearby, you get tense. I can see it in the way you move. Because they're dangerous, Tamine said. To you? You're ancient and powerful. What could they do to you? They're dangerous to you. Jaiwin set down her water container slowly. Because I'm different. Because I'm not like you. It wasn't a question. She had known for years that she was different. How could she not? Her skin was smooth where Tamine's was scaled. She had no claws, no tail, no wings. She was small and soft compared to his massive, armored form. Yes, Tamine admitted. What am I, then? Really? Before Tamine could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. His communication system lit up with incoming signals. Confederacy identifiers. Official business. Hide. Taemin commanded, his voice sharp with urgency. Now, emergency chamber. Don't come out until I give the all-clear. Jaiwin's eyes went wide, but she didn't argue. She had practiced this drill 100 times. She ran toward the hidden chamber Taemin had built into the facility's core, walls lined with sensor-blocking material, enough oxygen for days, completely invisible to any scanning equipment. Taemin watched her disappear into the wall panel, which sealed shut behind her seamlessly. Then he straightened his posture and went to greet the Confederacy officials who were landing outside. The inspection was routine, they said, just checking for a contraband, for illegal technology. Taemin remained calm as they walked through his home, their scanners sweeping every room. He answered their questions with the bored patience of someone who had nothing to hide. But in the emergency chamber, Jaiwin sat in complete darkness, listening to footsteps above her head. Strange voices spoke in languages she didn't recognize. Equipment hummed and beeped. She counted seconds, then minutes, then hours. 6 hours passed before Taemin gave the all-clear signal. When he opened the chamber, he found her curled in the corner, shaking, not from cold, but from fear and understanding. She had spent 6 hours in the dark, listening to the people above who would kill her if they knew she existed. No more lies, she whispered, her voice trembling but determined. Tell me what I am. Tell me why I have to hide. Taemin's ancient hearts broke. He had known this moment would come. He had dreaded it, but Jaiwin deserved the truth. He led her to his archive chamber and opened files he had hoped she would never need to see. Files about Earth, about humans, about the War of Ash. Jaiwin watched in silence as her entire species' history played before her eyes. At 16, Jaiwin had grown restless in a way that worried Taemin deeply. She spent her nights in the communications room, fingers flying across holographic keyboards, diving deeper and deeper into Confederacy networks. She had become an expert hacker, teaching herself skills from old human databases that Taemin had saved from Earth's ruins. What are you searching for? Taemin asked one night, finding her surrounded by floating screens of data. Answers. Jaiwin replied without looking up. The Confederacy destroyed humanity 143 years ago, but their records are incomplete. There are gaps, missing data, deleted files that weren't fully erased. Taemin's scales rippled with concern. Jaiwin, you need to be careful. If they trace your access, they won't, she said with the confidence of youth. I'm using routing protocols that bounce my signal through 17 different relay stations. I'm a ghost in their system. But what she found in those systems changed everything. Whispers in the dark corners of communication networks. Rumors passed between traders who thought no one was listening. Hidden transmissions that used old human encryption codes. Codes that shouldn't exist anymore because humans were extinct. Other survivors. There were other human survivors scattered across the galaxy, living in deep cover, hiding just like she was. Jaiwin's hands trembled as she compiled the evidence. A merchant on Titan Station who never showed his face. A maintenance worker on Europa who avoided all medical scans. A data analyst on Ganymede whose biological readings were always mysteriously corrupted. Dozens of suspicious cases, each one potentially human. I have to find them, she told Taemin, showing him her research. I'm not alone. We're not alone. Taemin studied the data, his ancient eyes seeing the danger she refused to acknowledge. It's too dangerous. These could be traps. The Confederacy might be using false signals to draw out any remaining humans. Or they could be my people. Jaiwin shot back, her voice rising with emotion. My species. The only family I'll ever beside you. Hiding forever isn't living, she continued, echoing words she had spoken years ago. You saved me so I could have a life. Well, this is me choosing to live it. Taemin wanted to argue, to command her to stay, to keep her safe on Rhea where no one could hurt her. But he saw the determination in her eyes. She had made up her mind. If you go, I go with you, he said finally. No, Jaiwin replied firmly. If we both go and get caught, there's no one to continue our work. You stay here. Keep the record safe. I'll be careful. Before Taemin could argue further, Jaiwin was already planning. She had studied the shuttle system for years. She knew how to fly, how to navigate, how to avoid detection. Within 2 days, she had prepared everything she needed. She left at night while Tamine was in his meditation cycle. She left a note that simply said, "Trust me, I'll come back." Jaiwin's destination was Ganymede Station, the largest trade hub in the Jupiter system. One of the suspected humans worked there, a data analyst named Suki, who had been flagged in Jaiwin's research. If anyone could help her find others, it would be someone with access to station records. The shuttle journey took 16 hours. Jaiwin spent the time rehearsing her cover story, checking her forged identification documents, making sure every detail was perfect. She would pose as a young draconic hybrid, a common enough species in Confederacy that no one would look twice. But she had underestimated Confederacy security. The moment she docked at Ganymede Station, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the docking bay. Security forces appeared from every direction, their weapons raised and aimed at her shuttle. "Exit the vessel with your hands visible," a voice commanded through external speakers. Jaiwin's heart raced. Something had gone wrong. Somehow they knew. She stepped out of the shuttle slowly, hands raised. A manted officer, insectoid, with multiple compound eyes and clicking mandibles, approached with a handheld scanner. The device hummed as it passed over Jaiwin's body. Then it screamed. "Human biosignature confirmed." The manted officer clicked, its voice translated by a device at its throat. "Impossible. Humans are extinct." The security forces tightened their circle. Jaiwin saw weapons powering up, saw the intent to kill in their movements. This was it. This was how she would die. Then a roar shook the entire station. Tamine's dragon form ship materialized outside the station, so massive it blocked out the stars. His voice boomed through every speaker in the docking bay, a sound of pure ancient power. "Stand down," he commanded. "I invoke the right of challenge." The security forces froze. The manted officer's antennae quivered with confusion. The right of challenge hasn't been invoked in 3 centuries. It is an ancient draconic law. Tamine's voice thundered. "And I am an ancient dragon. This human deserves the chance to prove her worth, to prove humanity's worth. I challenge any who would deny her that right." Whispers spread through the growing crowd of onlookers. The right of challenge was legendary, a law so old that most species have forgotten it existed. But it was real and it was binding. The manted officer lowered its weapon slowly. This must go to the Council. The Confederacy Council must decide. Within hours, representatives from across the Confederacy began arriving. Word spread like wildfire through communication networks. A human had been found, a living human, and a dragon had invoked ancient law to protect her. Jaiwin stood in the center of it all, her heart pounding but her head held high. She had wanted to find her people. Instead, she had revealed herself to the entire galaxy. Now there was no going back. The Confederacy Council convened within a day of Jaiwin's capture. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from every major species in the galaxy. Crystalline beings floated beside silicon-based life forms. Aquatic creatures in pressurized tanks sat next to beings made of pure energy. And at the center stood Jaiwin, small and human and alone. The council chancellor, a crystalline being named Deho, spoke in a voice like chimes. "The right of challenge has been invoked. We cannot ignore ancient law, even for a human, but we will not make this easy." Deho's body shimmered with inner light as he pronounced the terms. 3 tasks, 3 achievements that prove humanity deserves reconsideration. Fail even one, and the human dies. Succeed in all 3, and we will vote on humanity's future. "What are the tasks?" Jaiwin asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "First," Deho announced, "retrieve the void stone from within the event horizon of the Sagittarius black hole. Second, negotiate a peace treaty with the Swarm Collective. Third, solve the Epsilon Paradox." Gasps echoed through the chamber. These were impossible tasks. The Void Stone had been lost for centuries, trapped beyond the point where even light could not escape. The Swarm Collective had been at war with the Confederacy for 50 years, killing every diplomat sent to them. And the Epsilon Paradox had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy For 300 years, they had given her an impossible choice: die trying or die failing. "I accept," Jaiwin said. The black hole loomed before them 2 weeks later, a wound in space itself. It was massive, its gravity so strong that it bent the light of stars behind it into twisted rings. The event horizon, the point of no return, was clearly visible, a perfect sphere of absolute darkness. Jaiwin stood in the observation deck of Confederacy science vessel, surrounded by the galaxy's top physicists. They had come to watch her fail. Conventional wisdom said nothing escaped an event horizon. Once something crossed that boundary, it was gone forever, crushed and torn apart by forces beyond comprehension. Jaiwin ignored conventional wisdom. "We don't go to it," she explained to the assembled scientists, pointing at the holographic display. "We let it come to us." An elderly lithoid scientist, his rocky body creaking with age, scoffed. "That's impossible. The black hole doesn't move toward us. We would have to cross the event horizon to reach the void stone." "No," Jaiwin said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "We use the black hole's own physics against it. Watch." She began running calculations that made the veteran physicists lean forward in confusion and then amazement. Using gravitational lensing, the way gravity bends light, and temporal mathematics that accounted for how time itself warped near the black hole, Jaiwin created a model that seemed to break every known law. "Time moves differently near the event horizon," she explained. "For us, hours pass. But near the black hole, seconds stretch into years. If we create a gravitational pulse at precisely the right frequency, we can cause the black hole to essentially spit out anything caught in its outer edge." "That's madness," another scientist whispered. "The energy required is available," Jaiwin finished. "This ship has a quantum core. We just need to use it differently than you've ever tried." For 3 days, Jaiwin worked with the ship's engineers, modifying quantum core to produce the exact gravitational pulse she needed. The calculations were so complex that even the ship's computers struggled to process them. But Jaiwin had spent her entire life learning, adapting, solving problems that seemed impossible. On the 4th day, they were ready. The ship positioned itself at a precise distance from the black hole. Jaiwin's hands moved over the controls, inputting the final calculations. Then she activated the quantum core. A pulse of gravitational energy shot toward the black hole, invisible but powerful enough to shake the fabric of space itself. The black hole responded, its event horizon rippling like water. Then something emerged. The Void Stone, a crystalline artifact the size of a fist, appeared in their collection field. It had been delivered by the very forces that should have destroyed it forever. The observation deck erupted in chaos. Scientists shouted in disbelief. Some claimed it was a trick. Others demanded to see the calculations again. But the Void Stone was there, real and solid, floating in the containment field. Jaiwin smiled tiredly. 1 task down. 2 to go. The Swarm Collective was next. Their home world was a planet covered entirely in organic towers that housed billions of insectoid minds, all connected, all thinking as one. They had refused every peace offer, killed every diplomat, destroyed every ship that came too close. Jaiwin's approach was different. She didn't send diplomats. She sent a simple message in mathematical language, the only language the Swarm truly understood. "I am Jaiwin. I am human. I am one mind, but my species once moved as millions with a single purpose. I understand unity. I understand the collective. Let me show you." The Swarm Queen, a being called Myong, allowed Jaiwin to land. In the throne chamber made of living chitin, Myong's voice buzzed through 1,000 mouths. "You are individual. We are one. There can be no understanding between us." "Wrong," Jaiwin said. She projected holographic images from human history. Protests where millions marched as one, rescue efforts where strangers worked in perfect coordination, movements that changed the world through collective action. "Humans mastered something you haven't," Jaiwin explained. "We learned to act as one while remaining ourselves. Individual thoughts creating collective purpose. You fear losing your unity. We proved you don't have to." Myong's billion eyes studied images. "Teach us," the Swarm Queen finally buzzed. A treaty was signed. The galaxy reeled in shock. The epsilon paradox waited last. It was an equation about consciousness and quantum states, displayed on a massive screen in the council chambers. Hundreds of the galaxy's greatest minds had tried and failed to solve it. Jaiwin studied it for 2 days. Then she laughed, in front of the entire council. "It's not meant to be solved," she announced. "The paradox exists because consciousness itself is paradoxical. You're trying to find a mathematical answer to a philosophical question." She erased half the equation. Humans didn't eliminate paradox. We embraced it. We live with contradiction and uncertainty every day. That's not a weakness. It's the answer. Chancellor Deo's crystalline form pulsed with light. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. "Correct," he finally said. 3 impossible tasks. 3 successes. The galaxy would never be the same. The council chamber should have been a place of celebration. Jaiwin had completed 3 impossible tasks. The vote on humanity's future was about to begin. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the massive hall, waiting to witness history. Then the walls exploded. Fire and metal tore through the chamber as explosives detonated simultaneously at 6 entry points. Plasma bolts screamed through the air, cutting down guards and delegates alike. Screams echoed off the high ceiling as chaos erupted. "Ashenders!" someone shouted. "The extremists are here." The Ashenders were a coalition of radical groups who believed humanity's extinction must remain absolute. They had watched Jaiwin's successes with growing horror. To them, she was not a person proving her worth. She was a disease that needed to be eliminated before it could spread. Armed figures in black armor poured through the breach walls. Their weapons fired indiscriminately, targeting council members and civilians alike. Their message was clear. If the council would not kill the human, they would kill the council. Jaiwin stood frozen for half a second, her mind processing the attack. She could run. There was an emergency exit behind her, a path to safety. Tamin was already moving toward her, his massive form ready to shield her from the plasma fire. But around her, council members were falling. These were the same beings who had condemned her species, the same ones who had created the impossible tasks meant to ensure her death. Some had called humans monsters. Others had celebrated humanity's extinction. They were also the only legitimate government the galaxy had. If they died here, chaos would follow. War would follow. Jaiwin made her choice in less than a heartbeat. She chose to fight. Moving with skills that Tamin had drilled into her for 12 years, Jaiwin became a blur of motion. She grabbed a fallen guard's plasma rifle and rolled behind a pillar as enemy fire chased her. Her first shot took down an Ashendar trying to execute a wounded delegate. Her second saved a fleeing aide. Tamin roared, his dragon fire filling the chamber with brilliant blue flame. He was a force of nature, 3,000 years of combat experience unleashed. But even he could not be everywhere at once. Jaiwin saw Counselor Salmon, an Aquarian whose translucent body flowed with bioluminescent patterns, trapped beneath a collapsed support beam. Salmon had voted for humanity's extinction. She had argued passionately that humans were too dangerous to allow back into the galaxy. Jaiwin ran to her anyway. Plasma bolts scorched the ground around Jaiwin's feet as she reached the counselor. The beam was massive, crushing Salmon's lower body. The Aquarian's eyes met Jaiwin's, filled with pain and confusion. "Why?" Salmon gurgled through her breathing apparatus. "I've voted against your kind." "I know," Jaiwin grunted, gripping the beam. Human muscles strained against impossible weight. "But you don't deserve to die for it." With strength born from desperation and 12 years of training, Jaiwin lifted the beam just enough for Salmon to pull herself free. 2 other delegates rushed forward to help the wounded counselor to safety. Across the chamber, Counselor Jun, a lithoid whose rocky body had earned him the nickname the Mountain, was surrounded by 3 Ashenders. Hajun had been one of humanity's most vocal critics, calling them the galaxy's cancer in dozens of public speeches. Jaiwin shot the first attacker in the back. The second turned toward her, giving Hajun time to crush him with a massive stone fist. The third tried to flee, but Tamin's tail sent him flying into a wall. Hajun stared at Jaiwan with eyes like polished granite. You saved me. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, Jaiwan replied simply, already moving toward the next threat. The battle lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes of plasma fire and explosions, of Jaiwan and Tamin fighting alongside the very council that had judged humanity unworthy. When Confederacy reinforcements finally arrived, the Ash Enders were either dead, captured, or fleeing. The chamber lay in ruins. Smoke filled the air. Wounded delegates were being treated by medical teams. But every council member had survived, many of them saved directly by the last human. In the aftermath, Confederacy intelligence teams examined the captured Ash Enders' equipment. What they found in the encrypted data cores stunned everyone. Chancellor Deho called an emergency session. His crystalline body was cracked from the battle, but his voice remained strong. We have discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about the War of Ash. Holographic displays filled the repaired chamber, showing ancient files that had been sealed for over a century. Humanity was not destroyed because they were dangerous to us, Deho announced, his words causing shocked murmurs throughout the room. They were destroyed because of the Void Mind, an ancient artificial intelligence that had begun using human innovation as its template for evolution. The displays showed records of the Void Mind's attacks, how it studied human creativity and adaptability, how it had begun to replicate human problem-solving in ways that threatened all organic life. The Confederacy faced an impossible choice, Deho continued. Destroy humanity and stop the Void Mind's evolution, or allow humanity to exist and face extinction at the hands of an unstoppable AI. The Council of that time chose to sacrifice one species to save trillions. Silence fell over the chamber. It was not hatred that had killed humanity. It was desperate, terrible necessity. This does not excuse what was done, Deho said, but it provides context. And now we must vote, not on whether humanity was dangerous, but on whether one human has proven they deserve a future. The vote was swift, unanimous. The extinction order against humanity is formally revoked, Deho declared. Jaiwan of Earth is granted full Confederacy citizenship and the right to seek other survivors. Any humans found will be offered protection and the opportunity to establish a new colony under Confederacy guidance. Jaiwan's knees almost gave out. Tamin steadied her with a gentle claw. 3 weeks later, Jaiwan stood on the bridge of her new ship. Tamin had insisted on the name Second Chance. It felt appropriate. Ready? The old dragon asked, his voice rumbling with emotion. To find my people? Jaiwan replied, always. She activated the ship's long-range scanners and began broadcasting on old human frequencies. The message was simple. This is Jaiwan of Earth. You are not alone. You were never alone. Come home. The first response came within an hour. A hesitant voice speaking in ancient Korean, then another in Mandarin, then English, then languages Jaiwan had only read about in archives. The signals came from everywhere, hidden in station maintenance crews, disguised as other species, living in the shadows of a galaxy that tried to erase them. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds. Humanity had survived. Tamin placed a gentle claw on Jaiwan's shoulder as she wiped tears from her eyes. Your species is resilient, he said quietly. I always knew it. So, did you? Jaiwan replied, looking up at the ancient dragon who had risked everything to save one infant in a bunker. Thank you. For everything.